The Girl from Kandahar is the second in a series of 18 novels which I produced between 2011 and 2021 under the collective title Tales of MI7. This is one of a series of videos in which I attempt to explain, partly for my own future benefit, what inspired my work, what it's about, and what it was meant to achieve. I'll begin by getting the cliches out of the way. Firstly, the girl who stroke that did X almost certainly owes something to Stieg Larsson. Obviously, that's nothing to be ashamed of, only it is highly derivative. There are now too many girl who novels, and girl is arguably patronising for anyone beyond her mid-teens, as the woman in this one is. The second cliche, and thankfully I think it's the last significant one, is the secret agent who suffers a catastrophic accident and who returns from the brink of death with complete memory loss, and who then turns against her original paymasters. If you can get past all that, well done. The Girl from Kandahar focuses on one of the central characters from the Kramsky case, a young woman called Marcy Brown, who's under deep cover in Afghanistan. The Western coalition half-accidentally dispatches a drone at her village, and afterwards the regrettable conclusion is that she's been killed. Of course she hasn't. When she recovers, she's inside the household of an Afghan tribesman as a supposed relative. In terms of research, there were two books that I found overridingly useful in writing this novel. The first was James Ferguson's then newly published Taliban, the true story of the world's most feared guerrilla fighters. Ferguson helped me put the Taliban into their wider geopolitical context. We all know they're brutal and misogynistic, but their origin in Afghanistan's collapse after the Soviet withdrawal, their tribal roots, no less important than their religious loyalties, their role in Pakistan's fear of encirclement by India, and in Saudi Arabia's desire to check the Shiism in Afghanistan's north, all that was new to me, and it all fed into the novel. Equally helpful, in a different way, was Osneh Sarstad's 2002 The Bookseller of Kabul. Shortly after 9/11, Sarstad entered Afghanistan under cover of the burqa and lived with her family, from where she was able to observe the cultural position of women. The Bookseller of Kabul turned out to be legally and even morally controversial, but its enduring importance as a social report is undeniable. The Girl from Kandahar begins with four Pashtun women in a sexual relationship, which was rooted in the requirements of the narrative, and needed four women to cross two continents in order to launch a terrorist attack in London. Women in traditional Afghan gender roles wouldn't have worked. They're joined by a transgender woman. Implausible as some of that may sound, I haven't deviated much from the commonly agreed facts about sexual behaviour and identity in Afghanistan. For young men, homosexuality is often seen as a natural phase of development, not a matter of who you are, but simply something you might occasionally do in a society in which contact with young members of the opposite sex is virtually non-existent. As for women, we simply don't know. In a male-dominated culture, in which two men living next door to each other may know literally nothing at all about each other's wives, information's hard to come by. On the other hand, a certain distribution of different expressions of sexuality is natural across any society, so we can reasonably assume that lesbian behaviour must occur sometimes. The Girl from Kandahar is dominated by ambitious themes, the justifiability of war and the status of terrorism within that reckoning, the relationship between the sexes, cultural relativism, and the question of what makes a person who they are. Is there any single thing, or is nothing absolutely fundamental? Insofar as any novel about a major war can have a happy ending, this one does. Perhaps that's not much of a recommendation, but it is worth mentioning. Anyway, that's enough.